Baalbek is the indisputable proof that an unknown, advanced, and forgotten civilization left a deep mark on Earth. Yes, and in this video, we not only explain it to you, we prove it to you. With data in hand, documented measurements, visual comparisons, and evidence that can no longer be ignored. Not theories, not suggestions, but evidence. Stone by stone, proportion by proportion, we will take you on a journey into the inconceivable. Ultimately, it's your choice whether to believe the official version. But before we set off on this extraordinary journey, as we always do, we invite you to subscribe to the channel because your support is essential to us. It all starts in Lebanon, in the Bekaa Valley, 900 meters above sea level in a remote area overlooked by mass tourism, stands one of the ancient world's most enigmatic ruins, Baalbek. At first glance, it looks like a classic Roman archaeological site, imposing Corinthian columns, remains of temples, collapsed pediments, squared blocks. But that's just appearance. Look closely and you'll see something doesn't add up. Because beneath those temples, beneath the architecture we've been taught to recognize as Roman, there is a much older and much more inexplicable structure hidden. A cyclopean base made up of enormous megaliths called Trilithons, which have nothing to do with known engineering. Stone blocks that weigh up to 900 tons, 19 meters long, more than 4 meters high, and over 3.5 meters thick. At least 3 of them fit precisely into the temple's foundations, surrounded by dozens more blocks weighing 800 to 1,000 tons. To grasp the problem's scale, note that the largest documented Roman cranes could only lift 60 tons. The stones in the Great Pyramid of Giza weigh up to 80 to 90 tons, while those at Stonehenge are about 25 tons. And yet here, in ancient Heliopolis, we find blocks that weigh 10 times as much. This isn't just a technical detail, it's an architectural puzzle. And the most absurd thing is that official science doesn't offer any technical explanation for how this was possible. Yet they claim the Romans did all this. The same Romans who made columns composed of multiple drums, drilled in the center with the so-called Empolian holes to attach them to cranes. But in Baalbek, in the Trilithons and the other megaliths, there is nothing like that. No holes, no grips, and no traces. And it's not just a matter of size, it's a matter of construction logic. Why would a civilization, whoever they were, have taken on an almost impossible task just to create invisible foundations? And above all, are we sure that they're just simple foundations? That's the point. What you see today in Baalbek, the Roman ruins, were built on top of something that was already there. An older structure, more precise, more impossible. And that's where we'll start. Because if we really want to understand who built Baalbek, we need to look not up, but down. Baalbek still stands after thousands of years, but no one truly knows who built it. Or rather, we know, but only about the visible part, the Roman temples. The official history repeats it to us without any doubts. In the 1st century AD, Roman architects built the majestic temple of Jupiter, the temple of Bacchus, and the entire Heliopolis sacred complex. And it's true, many of the columns, friezes, and capitals that today stand out against the Lebanese sky are indeed Roman. But when you look closely at what these remains are resting on, then the narrative starts to falter. The temple's base is not Roman. You can see it right away even without being an engineer. The way the stones are cut changes. It becomes more precise, deeper. The fit between blocks is so precise that not even a blade can slip between the joints. The blocks are now enormous and massive, no longer just a few hundred kilos or tons. Not just for the Roman era, but for any known era. And yet they're there, fitted one on top of the other, placed several meters high on top of a base, which alone would be enough to challenge our modern lifting technologies. Here's the first detail official history doesn't explain: the Trilithons. 3 colossal blocks, each about 19 meters long, over 4 meters high, and more than 3 meters thick. Each of them weighs around 900 tons. No ancient civilization, including the Romans, could transport and position such massive stones. In fact, especially the Romans, because we know exactly how much they could lift with their cranes, at most 60 tons. A feat like that of the Trilithons simply was beyond their capabilities. Not only that, when the Romans worked with stone, they left obvious traces. The columns, like the ones you can still see today in the Temple of Jupiter, were assembled from stacked drums, each one drilled in the center so they could be hooked, rotated, lifted, and positioned. In Baalbek, the Trilithons lack any holes or evidence of transportation methods. Yet those blocks weren't left in the quarry. They were moved, transported uphill, and set in place, with such skill that the joints are invisible. The precision with which they were fitted together, the perfect adherence between the surfaces, the uniformity of the cut on every face. Everything points to technology that doesn't fit the 1st, 10th, or even 20th century AD. There is nothing in Roman documents, and this absence, more than anything else, is proof. The Romans documented everything: victories, construction, materials, and techniques. If they had really moved 1,000-ton blocks, they would have written about it everywhere. It would have been the very symbol of their mastery over matter. But instead, there's only silence. When you approach the stones of Baalbek, when you touch their surface, you're not simply looking at a block of rock, you're coming into contact with something that shouldn't be there. Not just because of the size, the weight, the perfect fit, but because of the marks. Those strange traces left on the stone, parallel, uniform, straight like laser engravings. At first they look like scratches, but then you realize they're not random at all. They're regular stripes up to 3 meters wide, drawn in a straight line, all in the same direction, and above all, identical to each other. This isn't natural erosion or man-made. There's no chisel that could create such symmetry, and no rudimentary tool that could leave such a consistent mark. The question becomes even more compelling. What technology was used to work these stones? Because those identical marks also appear elsewhere in the world. In China's Yangshan Quarry, thousands of kilometers away, there's an abandoned monolith weighing over 16,000 tons. There too, carved into the side of the block, there are the same parallel grooves, deep, perfectly straight. In Petra, Jordan, in its oldest and most hidden areas, long before the Nabatean civilization, you find the same cuts. We're not talking about a style. It's not an aesthetic choice, it's a technical signature, a working method that appears identical, in places that shouldn't have anything in common, neither in terms of era nor culture. But the real shock comes when you compare those marks with the engravings left by modern machinery. They all leave parallel, continuous, regular marks on the stone. Exactly like those at Baalbek, exactly like those at Yangshan, exactly like those at Petra. Can we still call these coincidences? One key detail that challenges the idea of Baalbek being built solely by the Romans is the issue with the columns. Not the columns visible inside the Temple of Jupiter, the ones tourists photograph, which are the work of imperial architects, but other older columns, fragmentary and therefore often ignored. Columns that were once standing, some still are, but today lie destroyed, scattered in large broken blocks. What immediately stands out is their composition. They are not made of local limestone like the Roman columns, nor are they made up of multiple drums, which, as we've seen, was the engineering practice at the time. These columns are monolithic, carved from a single piece of pink granite, and not just any granite. It's the same material quarried from the Aswan quarries in Egypt, the same granite used for the sarcophagi of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Anyone who has even a slight idea of how hard granite is knows that it's one of the toughest materials in nature. Even today, working with it requires diamond tools, high-speed cutters, and industrial techniques. Carving a several-meter-high pink granite column would take months. Precise machinery, polishing tools, and millimeter control. Yet these columns were not only perfectly cylindrical but also polished, with a transition between curved and flat surfaces so precise that it seems almost unreal. But if this is already hard to accept, the real mystery is not so much how they were carved, but how they were transported. Because those columns, let me repeat, come from Aswan, a place that is over 1,100 kilometers away from Baalbek. The issue isn't just distance. The route from Aswan to Baalbek crosses rivers, deserts, and especially mountains. Mountains average 2,500 meters high. There is no direct waterway or straight road, old or new, connecting the two locations. So how did they do it? But there's more. Many of these columns now lie destroyed, but granite doesn't break like limestone. It takes an immense, brutal, and sudden force to shatter it. Yet in Baalbek, the ancient columns weren't dismantled. They literally exploded, as if something sudden and catastrophic struck them all at once. Many Orthodox scholars simply record their existence. Few dare to explain it. Some suggest it was an ambitious Roman commission. But even in this case, the questions remain the same. Why use monolithic columns if the Romans themselves preferred to build them in sections? Is the destruction we see just from the passage of time, or did something happen we don't know about? Not far from the main site of Baalbek, right on the edge of the ancient sacred city, there is a quarry. It's a split in the rock, now open to the sky, but once hidden underground for centuries. The limestone blocks for the complex's foundations were extracted here. Here the mystery grows until it nearly becomes unbearable. Inside the quarry lies, tilted downward, one of the largest stone blocks ever carved by man, the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. It's a curious name, derived from a local legend, but it doesn't take away from its physical reality. This stone is over 20 meters long, about 5 meters high and wide, and weighs more than 1,200 tons. An impossible mass not only to lift, but even just to conceive. Yet it's not the largest. Because in 2014, under that same stone, during an excavation, a second colossus was discovered. An even more gigantic stone, even more impossible, the Forgotten Stone. A perfectly carved monolith, still partially connected to the rocky base from which it was about to be extracted. Its length exceeds 20 meters, the width is similar, but the weight reaches an incredible figure, 1,650 tons, the largest block ever worked by man. An object that, even with today's technologies, we couldn't lift easily. Theoretical models developed by engineers indicate that it would take dozens of modern industrial cranes positioned in perfect synchrony to be able to lift it. And even if it were possible, there wouldn't even be enough physical space to place all that machinery around the monolith. So the question returns, who was trying to lift this stone and with what means? There's an even more unsettling observation. The stone's position shows it was about to be lifted. The rock cut is nearly done. Yet it was left there as if something happened suddenly. Something devastating, something that stopped the work forever. But another detail deserves attention. On the surfaces of these blocks, you can find the same parallel working marks seen on the Trilithons of the Solcheneti temple, perfectly aligned, engraved on the stone, with a consistency not explained by chisels or ropes. Here the signature appears again, the sign of a lost technology, a technology that knew how to do things, but left no name behind. And if that wasn't enough, not far from the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, there's another colossus known as the Stone of the South. This block also exceeds 1,300 tons. Its upper surface was most likely visible during Roman times, and in fact, you can see small extraction cuts on it, as if the imperial builders, unable to move such a monolith, simply cut off pieces of it to reuse in more modest structures. It's a scene that says it all. A people who dared to build with 1,600-ton stones, and another people who, centuries later, arrived and could do nothing but dismantle and reuse them. Who were the first ones? Why do we only know about them from what they left in the rock? Today's visible ruins, triliths, and abandoned blocks may be just part of the archaeological site. Maybe not even most of it, since we don't know how deep Baalbek extends underground. No one has ever really excavated. We don't know what's beneath the foundations of the temple. We're only seeing what emerges on the surface. But the real Baalbek could be much larger and much older. And there's more. Next to the main quarry, the one that houses the stone of the pregnant woman and the forgotten stone, there is another quarry, right across the street. It's less known, not much explored, but even from what is visible, you can tell that it might be even bigger and more complex. No one is digging to discover what it hides even now. Maybe Baalbek isn't just an archaeological site. It could be a whole megalithic city lost to time. And we at best are only looking at the ceiling. But Baalbek, after all, is not alone. When you closely observe the marks carved into its blocks, those long parallel grooves, those edges beveled with surgical geometry, those surfaces polished like glass, you get a strange feeling of déjà vu. We've seen those marks before, even if it was across the world. In Peru, at Sacsayhuaman, cyclopean blocks fit together without mortar, with curved lines at angles like three-dimensional puzzles. In Tiahuanaco, Bolivia, extremely hard andesite blocks are crafted with millimeter precision. Some feature perfect cylindrical cavities, while others have grooves resembling marks from rotating tools. All these places have something in common. We don't know how they were built, and above all, none of the civilizations that, according to official history, inhabited them had the tools to create them. It's as if a forgotten knowledge, a technical and symbolic wisdom, traveled across the planet, leaving scattered traces, signing colossal works in stone, and then disappeared into nothing. And so Baalbek stops being a local mystery. It becomes a piece of a global mosaic, a point on the map that connects Egypt to Peru, China to Jordan, Europe to Latin America. The builders of Baalbek perhaps were not alone, perhaps they were not the first, and perhaps they were not even the last. We have reached the end of this journey inside Baalbek. We've followed the clues in the stone, blocks of unimaginable size, impossible cuts, shattered columns, unknown techniques, and visible traces of knowledge that challenge our understanding. And now that we have examined all of this point by point, anyone acting in good faith can no longer claim that these constructions belong to the Romans, nor to civilizations before them of which we have historical documentation. The facts speak for themselves. Of course, one inevitable question remains. What happened to this technology? Who used it? Who kept it? Why did it disappear? We'll answer this question in upcoming videos. But for now, we want to ask you if these are just clues for you, or if they are overwhelming evidence. Evidence that screams the presence of a forgotten civilization, erased but not completely, because its traces carved in the rock are still here. Let us know your opinion in the comments. And if you want to support our work, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because having your support is essential for us. See you in the next story.